Hello, welcome to How to Draft Easy Necklines. I'm Charlotte, a pattern cutter and teacher, and over the next half an hour I'm going to show you 10 easy ways of adapting your necklines. So that's particularly helpful for tops and dresses, and as we're approaching summer, I'm hoping I will be able to give you some ideas you like. The great thing is, of course, because the neckline frames our face, any changes there are gonna completely change your whole outfit. So even a small change can, create new garments. So these are really great pattern hacks, and you can use any existing dresses or tops or even jackets you might have drafted yourself, or it might be a commercial pattern. If you're using a commercial pattern, of course, make sure to take your seam allowance off and mark your stitch line. So you're working with your stitch line, not your seam allowance on the neckline. If you draft the pattern yourself, you will already know what your seam allowance is, and you can just take it off again. So hello everybody, hello Natalie and hello Maria, lovely to see you both. So yes, it's finally, it's spring, summer here, it's warm, the sun is out, so I'm in the mood for some nice summer dresses. And the great thing about pattern hacking or adapting something you already have is that you don't have to go through the full fitting and design process. You can add a little detail, and a lot of the time in fashion design or when making your own clothes, these little details completely reinvent the whole look while keeping the fit we love. And really good fashion labels do it as well, where each season you get the sort of same style but updated, because most of us, we love the staples we can just put on and feel comfortable in their fit, and then just updating them enough so it feels like we got something new to look forward to. And hello Amin, and hello Shelby, hello to Dallas. I bet you have some nice weather as well at the moment, hopefully. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the table, and I've gotten out my quarter scale blocks. I actually had to redraw them, and we can actually draw them out and go through how you change your necklines. And Natalie says it's raining. Yes, Natalie, in Australia, so for once, you might be in autumn, we are in spring. And hello, Miami fashion stylist, lovely to have you on here. So let's go over to my table. As always, this will be very rustic, and I do actually I'm supposed to have a new little plug-in to stop having to do this, but it doesn't work, so you will always have me moving my camera up and down. Let's start with the basics. So I've just drawn out a neckline, but of course that can look however you want to. As I said, if you have a pattern with a seam allowance, take that off because you're working off a stitch line. So the basic rules are, whenever you are having drawing in a neckline, and I did put out a little tip on this and actually on shorts on YouTube and on Instagram, and I had lots of comments about what is this actually about. It doesn't make any sense. So the basic rule is, whenever you're changing your necklines, what you don't want to do is draw in at the front, maybe measure where it hits, measure the same point, and then draw on your back. And yes, I have done this before. So what happens then is, for example, if I show you what happens. If I was just trace around my front like this, and my back, and normally I line up at the side, but I've done it different today. So if, for example, I wanted to change my neckline like this, so I draw a really nice neckline, and then I say, oh yeah, this is just moving in that much, I can then draw in my back like this. If you then line this up, you will end up with a wonky line where the two of them join. So the first rule, whenever you're drawing in a new neckline, it's always best to just line them up. So you line your front and back up on the high shoulder point. If you have a back dart, this side won't match. That doesn't matter because we're only doing the neckline, of course. And you can just tape it together or whatever, and then you can draw in a really nice smooth neckline. And it also gives you really indication of what a realistic neckline is, because sometimes when you want to draw in a neckline, you want to draw in, for example, a really square, which ends up with a weird shape. And by looking at the whole thing, it actually gives you an indication of what's possible and what works. So that's the basic rule for any neckline. Where always it connects the front and the back. So you always have to consider both when making it. Okay, let's start nice and easy. With just making it larger. So just the basic change would be to make it larger. And again, on our neckline, that can take lots of different shapes. The general rule is always you have a 90-degree at the center front, then you can sketch them whenever you want, and then it has to match the back on the shoulder. On the back, the general rule, if you want to have a normal sort of style, you don't want to go too low on the back. If you start going really low at the back, without fitting the garment, it can sort of want to pull forward. So if you want to have a lower neckline, you might have to do some contouring at the back, and it also works better on really fitted styles. If you have a loose style with a really low neck at the back and a really low neck at the front, what can happen is that it sort of pulls forward with gravity. So that's always something to consider. But the great thing, if you make your neckline larger, you can then do lots of alterations. So a larger neckline doesn't seem interesting, but then, for example, if you add some binding like this, and that can of course be done to any neckline, it changes the look completely. This is a Jeffrey Bean, and the important thing if you're adding a neckline is when you cut out your pattern, you don't do any seam allowance. So you're literally just working with your stitching edge, and then you add your seam allowance. So that's really important whenever you're adding binding. Otherwise it's really easy. You can use contrast, you can use self, and then an alternative of that is a facing, because binding, of course, because it is a strip of bias cut fabric, will only be a certain width, and it's really nice for stuff like that where it's quite delicate, it's framing it. But if you want a chunkier version, you will actually have to create a separate pattern piece like this, which is I actually really like it for framing your face. You can use contrast fabrics, and if you have a fabric which is maybe a little bit too lightweight for what you're trying to do, a facing means you have you can interface it and add more layers, and you add like a really nice structured frame for your face. So it sort of makes it sit really nicely, and if you pattern cutting a shape really nicely, then you can, of course, it will literally just sit and everything can hang from it. So especially if you looser garment, this will anchor it in. So facing is a really beautiful design detail, but it also helps with a fit and construction. So I do love a facing. Of course, a facing can also be invisible just on the inside, but I do like it as a detail. And then if you want to go double whammy, what I love as a detail is if you have a separate facing, all in the same fabric, and then into that edge here, you can either insert some binding, again, like a binding edge. You could do piping, or you could do rickrack as well. But rickrack, I mean a little tape. I'll show you quickly. And that's a really nice way of, if you, for example, want to cut quite a plain style, you can have matching rickrack, or you can have contrast rickrack. But rickrack is basically, I don't know if this is official name, this is what we called it. I imagine it's a French name. But you literally just stitch, you can stitch it like this, so all you get is sort of little scallop edges. And it looks really precious. It's a really pretty detail, and it finishes seams really nicely. And you can imagine that being inserted in all the seams. And you can either put it in this edge here, or another option is to actually do it like this. And that looks really pretty against your skin. I should maybe call this trimmings, isn't it? Or framing. It's not just binding. And the great thing is about rickrack, it comes in lots of sizes. So you can have massive one, which looks really nice and fun. And you can have teeny tiny one for when you want just a little detail. And they come in sort of different qualities as well. And they're sort of one of these things which can be disregarded because they look a bit haberdashery, but depending on how you treat them, it looks really nice. The same as binding. And for binding, I wouldn't actually probably use board binding, because that's always unless you use a cotton one, but it always is quite a the cotton I use, the weave never looks that nice. It's not a dance on these. So I was always, for the binding, I would use either fabric, different color, same fabric as your main fabric, or something which complements it but has the same sort of quality. Because if you use a cheap binding, it will of course make it look a little bit, it will actually bring it down. It sort of make it look like you're just sort of finishing an apron and stuff, rather than it becoming like highlighting it and lifting it up. So using proper dressmaking fabric for that makes all the difference. And we've got lots of feedbacks, lots of fans of the binding. I'm glad I'm not alone. And Jean is saying, I like those sleeves. Yeah, they're beautiful. That's a lovely, very easy, relaxed dolman sleeve or grown-on sleeve, and they're also really easy to draft and really comfortable. And Jeffrey Bean had quite a long career. It's really interesting, a variety of styles what he's done. I really like this one with the pink and green. It's just beautiful. And Ginger Nosette loves the binding as well, and she loves the pink outfit as well. And Natalie says she loves the top, not sure about the belt. Yeah, the belt is a bit with the quilting. He always did quite a lot of sportswear influences, so I wonder where that belt is coming from. But it's a bit too, maybe with the rounded edge, it looks a little bit like a oven glove or something. Very odd. And Natalie saying, what do you call the neckline on the image? Okay, so that's a really good question, and that sort of brings me on to the next variation we can do. Let's have a look. And I'm going to call these boat necks, but boat necks makes us think of something really specific, but maybe call it wide necks. But there's lots of variations where you basically, instead of going down as well, be moving wider. And there is, of course, there's this example, but by combination, by contrast, we can also do something like this lovely one. Which is from the 60s. And these are all sort of necklines. There you go out. So instead of, so you basically end up with collars which look like this or like this. They look quite close to the neckline, and the way you've drafted them, and this way becomes quite interesting because that's a bit different. You know how up to now I've told you the front and the back are the same. With a neckline like this, you have two options. So whenever you want like a wide neckline, you can either, sorry, move image. So whenever you want a wide neckline like this, you see I've traced out the front and the back and lined them up. If you want something like the pink, you can just sort of, it might be something like this. So it's just parallel, or it might actually be wider, but it's still, can you see, it's still a continuous neckline like that. Right angle at the center front, and which looks really pretty. The other option is whenever you're having a neckline like that, and of course you can do it geometric as well, that is the same effect. You're basically not moving down that much. We might move down a little bit, but we're moving outwards more. So it's a different way of framing, more for summer maybe, because it's quite a wide neckline. And Natalie is saying it's a bateau. It could be a bateau. Yes, I always wonder, because bateau, is bateau the same as, that's a French name for it? Yes, you're completely right. I always wonder what it translates as, because of course there is that children's wear company. And Natalie is saying, Charlotte, we can't see. Hopefully you can see now. I did realize I completely covered up the screen. So yes, sorry about that. It's always trying to juggle too many things at once. Yeah, so whenever you doing a neckline like this, a wide neckline, maybe a shallow neckline, it's important you still want the shoulders to line up. So you can even see on this one, it's just a square neckline, but again, it's something like this. And can you see, if you would draft this yourself, you would always want to draw with a right angle. So by laying these two together, it actually tells you the shape you want it to be, which is why it's so important to join it all up. So these are the sort of wide boat necklines, which are a really nice variety. And you know, you can have lots of pattern hacks. There's probably 2 or 3 pattern hack ideas in one. Okay, let's have a look at, oh, and Natalie is saying, or she's either Googled it or she's very knowledgeable. In English, bateau is a flat bottom boat. So yes, so it's like a boat neckline. And I think you quite often see it at, again, it's like a flat, like if you think about a rowing boat, it is something like this, isn't it? You know, that would be like your neckline shape here. And then of course you get some really like what we would call maybe a punt boat in England, and that's really flat. So again, it's that sort of shape, so it makes complete sense. So there you go, I've learned something new, which is lovely. So these are the sort of bateau necklines, and what is quite interesting is all of these, no matter how close you go to the neckline, so it might even be that you actually stay on the original neckline and you shape it like this, or if you want to have that, I'm going to do it on a new page, because what will happen if you want to have a completely straight line. And I'm going to do a straight line versus what the straight illusion. Because what we want is a neckline which looks straight. However, if we have a neckline which is completely straight, it actually raises up. So if on our front we extend our center front upwards and then we draw a line at 90 degrees. So it looks completely straight on the pattern. What we actually end up with, if it's us, is a neckline which raises up a little bit like that. And that's just to do this illusion. So it is actually a straight line, but it looks like it raises up. Which is why, if you look at this vintage image, they have added a little bit of a keyhole to make it a feature. Because if you want to actually have an illusion of a straight neckline, so a neckline which looks like it's like that, that will actually, surprisingly, on the pattern, be just very, very slightly curved. So it starts at a right angle, but then it curves up here. But this one is just a completely straight line. And that's one of those things, the best way to work out what neckline works for you is just put on your 12, your existing garment you change your neckline on, and literally with a tape or a pen, probably a tape if you're using a existing garment, just draw something which looks straight. So you will start out completely straight, and then you curve it slightly up. Because the problem is, and I've got a few where it's actually a knit garment where it's completely knitted straight, and it always raises up a little bit too much, so you always have to stand very straight, and you always sort of want to pull it down a bit. So it's one of those things, and where logically we want to draft it like that, but because we have a 3D body, we actually need to curve it a little bit. But apart from that, it's a really nice illusion. So all you really nice neck pattern hack. All we have to do is extend this on the front and then draw on our neckline. And for this one, we can't really, we lay our back neck on, you can see you can't really do a smooth line. So on our back, you make it a feature, and quite often you might have seen the ones where you then have like a button or something, and that just plays with the idea that the front and the back don't actually match. So that's a really nice way of doing it. Okay, let's have a look at another pattern hack. Have you got a favorite so far? I do always like I like little changes like this, because that can join a really change a really simple style into something much more substantial, and you have lots of fun, and it's a really nice finish. Okay, let's have a look at another style. Okay, moving sort of with that straight square neckline, let's have a look at geometric style, which is really nice. And this is a Balenciaga style, so it's similar to boat neck, but it's a little bit lower. And I'm going to zoom in for a second. What is really nice about this, you can, well, actually, Studio, I apologize. I was thinking as I'm looking at it, that doesn't look that Balenciaga, but you can see it's a really lovely dress. It looks late 50s, doesn't it? Maybe just when Yves Saint Laurent came onto Dior, and it's got some lovely panels, empire line, and then these nice, really nice pockets, and it's got a really nice shoulder as well. But can you see how I've done the neckline at the back as well? And what's really important with geometric necklines, what makes, whenever you have a style like that, let me make it smaller. With geometric lines like that, you want it to look like it's sort of square here on your body, which means, again, on your pattern, you definitely want a right angle, but then a lot of the time you actually end up with a much wider angle, so a obtuse angle. And then you hit the shoulder at a right angle, because if you draw on a right angle here, can you see you hit it really high, and then you sort of start getting into wonky territory. By having a wider angle there, you actually end up, it gives you an illusion of being nearly straight. The best thing again is to just draw it on your existing garment exactly where you want it, because the position of this is really important. You want to hide your bra in it, and then you can either have it to the existing neckline, what they've to existing armhole, what they have done, so it's sort of, it's quite a daytime style. But of course for summer you can also make it narrower, and then maybe even have a sort of geometric armhole, which is really pretty. And then what they have done at the back again is another geometric neckline, and again important at the back, the same thing. You want a right angle at the center back, and that will tell you how the neckline needs to run. So it's these sort of little considerations where we actually like, what angles do we need there, you know, we need that curve there, what happens if you have a completely straight line. And these little adaptations to your patterns will make all the difference in what style you're creating. Okay, let's do something actually, let's have a look at this one, this is more completely different, which is, I guess, is a type of sort of sweetheart or curved neckline. And this type of neckline is really versatile. And you can see the reason I wanted to show you in contrast to the last one, because it's completely different. It doesn't stay away from the neck. Instead, it actually moves closer to the neckline, and it can be like that, or of course it can also be round, or again it can be geometric. But this time we're basically doing the opposite of before, and it's always, well, which is what I love about pattern cutting, is that you learn the principles, and of course it's always, have a look in the description. I put the links in how you can learn with me more. But the way I like to teach is the sort of always the drafting principles behind it, whether that's a specific sort of vintage style or a drafting principle. You can then experiment with it. So for this style, for example, it's, again, we're drawing in a neckline, but changing, it's actually all about the side angle, because this at the front can be any shape you want. So they've done it like that, but of course you can do whatever. But this time, instead of it hitting the shoulder at a 90 degree, you basically just stay as close as possible, or as close as you want to original neckline. So you end up with a neckline shape like this. So this is probably much closer to a 90 degree than this, but because of our 3D body, the 90 degree on the 3D body actually becomes quite close. So it's always where you, by flat pattern cutting, you learn quite a lot between the connection, what's 2D and what's really what it's going to look like in the 3D, the changes you make in the 2D. But you can see, same sort of thing, we're drawing in geometric lines, and of course that could be straight, but the look, just whether we want to keep a right angle at the shoulder, or whether we actually sort of keeping a right angle here, that completely changes the actual look of the neckline. Both of these really easy to draft, and if you think about, if you had a dress with a round neckline and you do either this one or this one, it will completely change any existing dress you have. So these are two really nice adaptations. Okay, let's have a look at some more. Okay, well, I wanted to, okay. Sorry, a name. I wanted to show you this one. Let's have a look at something completely different. This is a Valentino. And it's basically your normal crew neck, round neck knot line. But this time the neckline is scalloped, which makes it, again, completely different and changes the look. And this, I think it might be more winter, but I think it's really beautiful. And what you have to be really careful, the rule right at the beginning, I said, how we always have to look at the whole neckline. And it's really important with styles like that. And of course it can be like, it can be scalloped like this. This is actually hardest to construct because you're doing lots of really beautiful curves, and the curves have to be utterly perfect. But of course you could also have you could just have, for example, just 2 scallops. What is really important is that you have to have even amount of scallops. So what you need to do, at this point they actually have a scallop hitting right in the shoulder, which probably where the shoulder seam is. But what you need to do is you need to measure your back neckline and your front neckline, and then to a certain degree, because you want the same scallop, the front and the back, so there has to be a size which you can divide both the front and the back in. So for example, if our back is 9 centimeters, yeah, and our front is, say, 11, I would then actually redraw the front slightly bigger until it's 12, because if you have a 12, you can divide both of these by 3, which means you have 3 scallops at the front, 4 scallops at the back. Sorry, around 3 scallops at the back, 4 scallops at the front, and that's really important. And of course the other thing is as well, but you have to make your neckline bigger to begin with, unless you want the scallops to go up your neckline. So basically you need to draw in a neckline where the front and the back is a certain numbers of whatever your scallop width is. So you have to be able to divide the same distance. And Natalie's saying, I was just thinking I wouldn't want to have to sew the scallops. Nope, me neither. I was looking through some stuff I've made before, and I actually once did, as when I was interning with a company, it was my job to sew scallops like that, and I still remember it. Actually, let me have a look if I can quickly upload it. I was going through all my old stuff recently. Okay, let's have a quick look. Oh, hold on a second. Whether I actually saved it or not, and sorry, this is, did I save it? It might be, no, that's not the one, sorry. That's something else I made. I will find it, and I put it somewhere else recently, but I was looking back at it and thinking, oh, that was so much work. And I don't think I was even paid. Oh, it was another one where you can see I cut out all the triangles and stuff. But stuff like that, yeah, the construction is really tricky. And what you will have to do, of course, is your pattern piece would have a facing and probably a lining. And that's how it would also give you a really neat finish. And Natalie was saying, they're cruel to make you do it as an intern. Well, that's the thing with being an intern, isn't it? You're at the mercy. Oh, and Threading Joanne is saying, what was that fabric in, was it red? What fabric was that red? Do you mean the red Valentino dress? That is a wool, I imagine. The one I just showed you is something I made as an intern. And I will try to now find it again. If I zoom it in. So this was a... Okay, sorry. Technology is wonderful, but if you try to do live, it's not always so much fun. Sorry. Let me try to find that image. Okay, here, this one. Okay. So this was a top I made as an intern, and I did all the embroidery for that, and I think with stitching as well. And it's just, you can see, it's a very pretty top with a very nice bow neck, but nothing to do with the pattern hacking. We got it distracting, and that was just a cotton. The Valentino is, I would imagine, being Valentino, it's a beautiful wool. So the scallop dress is definitely lovely quality. Okay, I have two more styles I want to show you. One is a really nice way of what you can do to any necklines, which are basically peekaboo. I call it peekaboo. I don't know if it's official name, and sort of cutouts. And you can see there's a really nice peekaboo there, and all you do, this is probably the easiest one, is you literally just use your existing neckline. Then you're going to bind it, which means you have your raw edge, and then you just draw in shapes. What you might find is that you actually have these shapes slightly wider. So instead of touching, it might look like that. And when they're closed by the binding for tighter fit. And there's also ways of basically using part of your dart shaping into here to make it fit really nice and close. But it's basically really an easier way of a scallop thing, because you're just having one or two. Again, you would have a facing there, which can be narrower or wider, and then you just bind it, so you just finish it. So it's just straight seams rather than the scallops. So that's a really nice way of creating a detail, and you can do all sorts of shapes. And it can either be a pure detail like this is, or what is really nice, but if you combine it with section opening. So if you have an opening, it's basically what it is you instead of having an opening at the back, you're basically creating like a keyhole at the back, at the front, but instead of it being just straight, it becomes a geometric shape. And that's quite often also used on the bias, and it can be this shape, or it can be this. But it's basically a much easier construction than a keyhole like that. So it's easier to finish, because this is always a little bit tricky to finish here. There, it's just straight seams, and it's much easier to finish. And then you just add to your facing again, like that. And the great thing is you can then have a little button, or you can actually add a binding tie, or a third option, but you need a seam here, is to actually have like a grown on tie. So you can even do it like this, where you just extend your pattern piece into a tie, and you can make it a little bit wider there, so it gets a really nice sort of drapey neckline. But these are all, again, literally on your pattern piece. You're just cutting it out, and they're really nice variations, and they completely change the look on a simple top. So top like that with a round neckline is completely different, and they also give you easy access, which is always great. So you can get your head. And let's finish off with some Balenciaga, because you can never go wrong with Balenciaga. And this is not the sort of big sculpture Balenciaga. This is really beautiful David Balenciaga, which I actually love because he did a lot of really beautiful wearable style. But you think the neckline is actually really clever, but it's really easy, and the sleeves are really beautiful. And well, what I love about how the sleeves or the neck or the armholes echo the sleeve. But all this is, instead of having a round neckline, what we basically have is either I'm going to draw it again. What we basically have is a geometric neckline with like a fold over collar, and then at the back it could be the same, or the back could be a completely normal neckline, and you can have it on a V-neck like Balenciaga, or you can actually have it on a nearly straight neckline as well, like that. Or of course you can do actually or any shape you want. And all it is on your pattern piece, you draw in whatever neckline you want. It could be this, for example. And then, instead of cutting it along there, you basically extend your center front, and then you draw another straight line to meet your original fold line at the shoulder, and that becomes your fold line, and then it just folds over, and again you have a facing. So it's like a cheats collar, really easy to deconstruct and giving you a really nice vintage style. So these are actually, I think we went through a whole lot more than 10, but whenever, that is the great thing with pattern cutting, once you understand how it all works, and you can use your sewing patterns or you can draft your own, you have so many variations, and that's what I love about it. You're not always, whenever you want fancy something new, you don't have to go out and buy a pattern and cut it out and trace it through and fit it. You can just go into your pattern box or sewing pattern box and amend whatever you want, and so you can enjoy the designing rather than having to start from zero, which is what's so great about pattern hacking or pattern adapting or basically pattern designing. We're concentrating on the design elements rather than starting afresh each time. So I hope you enjoyed these ideas for summer dresses, winter dresses, tops and blouses and more. And do let me know if you make any. As always, I would love to see. And yes, do share with me. But for now, that's it. And thank you so much for watching. And Pauline is saying, thank you for inspiration. You're very welcome, Pauline. And Fredeling Jean is saying, experimenting is always fun. Yes, and the great thing is this is like a really quick way of experimenting with really nice results, so rather than always having to start with all the stuff which takes ages and is quite boring, you are starting at this point where you actually can be really creative and try things out really quickly. And Natalie is saying, thank you for all the tips on finessing your necklines. Yeah, I think that you're very welcome. I think necklines always, you think, oh, it's either like you're just drawing a line or it's really complicated, but it is quite straightforward. But there's little tips on getting non-wonky necklines, so you do want to avoid it, and not just learn through experience and mistakes like I did. And you're very welcome, Maria and A. Jensen and Miami fashion stylist and Fredeling. And if you enjoyed this, I will be back next Thursday, because Trisha and I, we had a scheduling clash, so we know Trisha and me, but I'll be back next week with some more ideas for you. So hopefully see you then. But for now,